Well, thank you for joining us for episode 3 of the Glorious Years series. We are, as part of the club's 150th anniversary, taking a look back and celebrating a golden period in the history of Gloucestershire at the turn of the millennium with 6 Lord's final victories. We are now turning our attentions to the season of 2000. Actually would be the most successful season in the club's history. The game in question today is the Benson Hedges Cup final. Winning that game would actually make Gloucestershire the first county to be victorious in 3 successive Lord's finals. It would be a convincing 7-wicket victory versus Glamorgan. We are joined today by 2 important players from that game and from that whole era. And we're very grateful to them for joining. I shall introduce first a one-club man who followed in the footsteps of his father, Tony, who played for Gloucestershire for 8 years, actually. His son, Matt, he played for Gloucestershire on the books from 1992 to 2006, with 218 List A appearances for Gloucestershire, makes him the 10th most in our history. He scored 4,810 List A runs, so that puts him 9th on the list of Gloucestershire batters in List A cricket. In this particular match against Glamorgan, he scored 53 not out to bring the club home to victory. Now works in finance, in private finance for clients, but very much still involved with Gloucestershire County Cricket Club as he is chairman of cricket. I'd like to say a big hello and welcome to Matt Windows. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Neil. Thanks for the introduction. I'm actually staggered by those figures. I never quite knew where I actually stood, so that's amazed me.
Well, we've been doing some quizzes during this lockdown for fans to guess about numbers of appearances, numbers of runs across all formats. Yeah, and you're up there, Matt. So obviously a proud record. But how's lockdown been for you, and how have you been getting on?
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult period for everybody, but you can make the most of what you've got, appreciate what you've got around you. For me, actually, personally, it's not been a great deal of change because I'm quite used to working from home. And so when you're looking after, private client money, family money, etc., that is, as they say, the world never sleeps in that department. So I've kind of been on it. It's been a bit of a roller coaster ride. There has been, as Snape will probably allude to, some sort of psychology involved in it, but we've got through it, and we are hopefully coming out the other side. But it's been different, to say the least. Bit of homeschooling, looking after the kids. Yeah. Break time coming in. Raiding all the cupboards, but I can't quite understand how much these kids eat nowadays. So I'm now seeing it in full flow. But it's been all right. We're getting through.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Matt. And I'll now introduce our second guest, and he's a 3-club man. So he played for Northamptonshire, he played for Gloucestershire, and went on to play for Leicestershire. He won 6 limited overs titles in his career, 4 with Gloucestershire. But he would go on to win 2 T20 titles with Leicestershire, the second of those as captain. Played in 10 one-day internationals for England, making his debut in 2001 when he was a Gloucestershire player. Since cricket, of course, he's become a leading personality and person in his field. He got a master's in sports psychology. He founded his business Sporting Edge in 2005, which we'll talk a little bit about. In doing so, he has worked with a number of leading sports organisations across the world, including the England cricket team, South African and Sri Lankan cricket teams, England rugby under Eddie Jones, and many others as well. It's a big pleasure, and thank you very much for joining us today, Jeremy Snape. Hello, Jeremy. How are you?
Great to be here. Great to connect with everyone again.
And how are you getting on in lockdown, and how's the business?
Yeah, interesting. I think, like most people, it's been a bit surreal. There's been the families that have been deeply affected by illness and tragedy through it. And then there's been people who are sitting at home, like Matt. I live out in the countryside. We've got young kids, and we're out walking and keeping healthy and eating well, and it seems a bit surreal that everything's locked down. But yeah, a bit of homeschooling and trying to, navigate through it from a business point of view has been particularly hard. I mean, most of our income came from speaking at conferences and things like that for companies. So clearly that's all been shut down. But as part of my research over the last 10 years, I've been interviewing a lot of the world's top coaches and neuroscientists and performance experts, and I license that content out and package it for all of our corporate clients. So that side of the business has accelerated really quickly, as you can imagine. And that digital business is now all consuming. So it's been a big change, but, in a way, I'm used to traveling a lot. I fly around a lot and speak at various conferences around the world. And it's been quite nice to be at home with the kids and just relax a bit. So yeah, a bit surreal, but thankfully we're all well and we've got through it so far.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, no, good to hear that it's going okay for you, the pair of you. And I mean, we are going to test you today. Obviously, going back in the memory banks here, we are going back 20 years. So if we can get into that that mindset, and of course, I suppose one of my first observations would be in 2000, you've come off the back of a double winning season in 1999. So perhaps you were at this point no longer the underdog when you went into a tournament. And I'd like to sort of just start before we get to the final, just to go over the group stage and the road to the final in the Benson Hedges Cup. And it was actually a kind of rain-wrecked group stage. You had a loss to Glamorgan. You'd of course meet in the final in the 25 over game. You had abandonments versus Worcestershire and Northants, and a win against Warwickshire, which kind of gave you a winner-takes-all match against the rivals Somerset at home to proceed to the quarterfinals. I mean, Matt, in that game, you scored 42 not out, but did you have any memories of that game or of that time in that group stage?
You're testing me here, Neil. I can tell you. It wasn't vivid. I mean, as I said, it wasn't a vivid. I don't recall a lot of that group stage stuff, but I have more, more idea of what happened in the final. But certainly in the lead up to that, I think as a group we were, confident, a confident unit. I think we knew and backed our own skill sets, and the one advantage we had is when we knew we played at Bristol, that this was a fortress for us. So, I think we backed ourselves in any given situation to win, at home. And as I said, you're picking out stats that, 20 years ago, I just sort of passed by me, unfortunately. But, like any game with Somerset, it would have been a West Country derby, great rivalry, and a lot at stake. And clearly there was, because I think this was the one that, if we got right, propelled us through into the final. So the small detail I can't remember, but Bristol was a home advantage, and for us, we knew we could put pressure on, and if we got it right, we'd come through victorious, which we did.
Yeah, and then you went on to beat Sussex in the quarter-final by 29 runs, and a semi-final at home against Lancashire. Again, another win by 15 runs. I want to ask you, Jeremy. We've had two episodes where we've discussed how our bowling unit would squeeze the opposition after you batted first. Was that just an accepted tactic and a strength of the team? Obviously you were a key part of that.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I think one of our key weapons was really, having a huge outfield, a very slow wicket. And really our key weapon was frustration, I guess. There was some incredible talent in the team for sure. I mean, Ian Harvey, nicknamed the Freak, led the way with his pace and his variations and his slower balls. But, myself and Kim Barnett and, a few of the medium pacers perhaps were there just to really frustrate. And I think the combination of accurate, slower paced bowling and a dynamite sort of fielding group was really made it feel incredibly claustrophobic for the big teams, who of course were used to playing on the test grounds. So we played against Lancashire, as you mentioned. I remember all the big shiny players coming down with their, shiny bats coming out and playing, and expecting this beautiful crisp cover drive on the up to fly into the pickets and them to stand back with their shoulders back and, get the adulation of the crowd. But of course, when they got Kim Barnett or myself, doubling in and bowling for myself, moon balls, and Kim at, in the 50 and 60 miles an hour with a, really tight ring field, this sort of ball hardly reached them in the first place. And then when it did hit them, it felt like a rotten orange, and the ball sort of trickled off to backward point, where myself or Matt would sort of whiz the ball into Jack, who was in the face, and creating that intensity around them. So I think, batsmen really got a shock, and I think it really took patience more than anything to be successful on those grounds. And of course, we'd worked out a pretty formidable game plan that we knew we'd had our hearts broken with those on the up cover drives, and we'd worked out that actually a squirt to backward point or a flick over deep mid wicket for 2 or 3 and running rapidly between the wickets was the way to do it. So I think we created an incredible game plan, and I think I remember getting Michael Atherton out on that pitch, and I think the ball might have hit a turnip or something on the way down. But the wicket was slow. I think he was heartbroken, partly at the fact he'd got out at a critical time, but partly at the fact he got out to me as well. I think it was just heartbreaking for him. So we definitely had a great win there. And again, it was another massive close win that we seem to just keep winning these really tight games, and to go into the dressing room knowing that, we were going to get back to Lords again was incredible. So yeah, fun memories.
I mean, do you think on a personal level, you dismissed Michael Atherton, obviously, with his stellar international career that he had. Do you think that getting him out in a big game such as a semi-final was part of your elevation, the following year into England colours? How would you see it?
I don't think that half tracker against Lancashire got me selected particularly, but I do think that being part of an incredible team, I mean, there's absolutely no way I would have played for England unless I was part of the Gloucestershire team that dominated during that period. I mean, obviously I had to deliver a role personally. I was batting well and scoring centuries and diving around in the field and keeping that energy up, and also probably quite a canny bowler rather than particularly, skillful. So I think that all-round package, being part of a winning team, which England were desperate for at this time. Remember, they were moving the selections round and they couldn't quite work out their best team. And as well, there was an opportunity in that, spot in the team, people like Robert Croft, and it was probably just at the end of Robert Croft and just before Ashley Giles. So there was an open opportunity for somebody to take. So I was very fortunate. I worked incredibly hard for it without a doubt, but being part of that Gloucestershire side was the rocket fuel that I needed to get there.
I wanted to come on to sort of preparations for the final, because what struck me about the 2 episodes we've recorded so far is that when discussing how the team prepared for those big Lords finals, I've been kind of surprised to hear that actually you did nothing different. You prepared as you would ordinarily prepare for any match. But I mean, Matt, do you recall preparations for that final? Was it the same? Was it always the same and no different?
Yeah, I think we prepared as though as normal, really. And as Snapey said, we all put a lot of hard time and effort into whatever we did. We're exceptionally proud of what we did. I think I remember one preparation we did, Snapey, didn't we? We had that legendary dinner party before one of the rounds, which certainly got Bracers' blood boiling, where Harv was somewhat left in the armchair at home, somewhat under the weather. I think he'd picked up some flu bug, so Bracers was quite keen to get him back on the track.
Wasn't it?
But apart from that, no, we all, as a unit, we worked bloody hard. We prepared hard, and we left nothing on, left on the sidelines. We just gave it everything we got, and fortunately enough, we were able to perform during the periods of pressure, and we came good at the right time.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's part of, first of all, the work ethic. I mean, Steamy mentions there a night where perhaps ran away from us a little bit, I think it's fair to say, which was all part of it in the preparations at Bristol. But we knew that it wouldn't be an easy training session that day. And I think the skiers that we were having to catch were twice as high as normal. So we had to make sure we either clung onto it or didn't get hit in the sternum as they dropped down from the sky, because John was putting an extra little bit of wrist work to get them up into the clouds. So there was an incredible amount of hard work going on right through the winters. I mean, I remember running in the David Lloyd gym with Matt on the treadmill at a sort of ridiculous incline like the north face of the Eiger, and we were sprinting in sort of 2-minute bursts. And then until we fell off the back and sort of taking it in turns. So we were the fittest team in the country without a doubt. And I think that was one of our areas of advantage. And then I think, obviously, in my work now, working with those elite teams, what you're trying to do with teams is make sure that you've got almost a predictable and controllable rhythm and routine moving into the game, because sport is uncontrollable and unknowable. So we don't know what we're going to face. So the more we can make predictable and systematic as we go into the stadium, the better it makes you feel at home. So I think you could pretty much, start and stop a stopwatch to the drills that we did. The physio would know that you've got 6 minutes warming the guys up through the ladders. You've got 15 minutes to do your own catching or bowling at a stump. You've got 20 minutes to go and hit some balls in the nets, whatever it might be. And then at a particular time, Mark Alleyne would have us in the dressing room, ready to give the team briefing, and we'd all get changed and go out. So it looks like it's got a military precision about it, and it definitely had. But I think what that does is it gives you predictability and control. Because the worst thing is everyone's sitting around with the nerves that go on in those massive games, and you're all looking around going, what's happening next? What do we do? Where should we be? And all that sort of stuff. So your energy is very much focused on these sort of short phases of preparation, so that you can deliver yourself and the rest of the team onto the pitch in a calm and controlled manner, which obviously as we went into this season, we'd had some success the previous year. And now it was about, can we do it again? Was that a fluke? Was that just 1 year? And we knew that the great teams, there's been obviously a brilliant series on the Chicago Bulls on TV recently. And, those great teams don't just have a great season or a great win. They have a dynasty. They have a sort of 3 or 4 year period where they absolutely dominate. And I think we knew with Ian Harvey and Jack Russell and some of the other players, Mark Alleyne was in amazing form. And we knew that we got a special opportunity to keep winning. But keeping winning doesn't mean doing the same thing. It means keep reinventing, keep innovating, keep working hard. And people like Matt playing, brilliantly and consistently. And, we've got some great performances to take us over the line.
I mean, I like what you said about the sort of the predictability and the drills that you had. For this match, Glamorgan won the toss and batted first. Now, in the 2 previous Lord's finals, you'd batted first. So, I suppose a question would be: do you remember if you were going to bat first again if you'd won the toss? And Matt, I don't know, was there any different mindset in terms of all being in the field for the first time in a Lord's final?
Yeah, I mean, history had shown that we'd probably done better squeezing sides out of it and choking them that way. So again, I can't remember exactly what we would have done if we had won that toss, but I think I can remember walking in from that first innings where Glamorgan had set us 225 runs. For us, well, for me, I thought that was quite a high and steep total. I mean, I remember it being it was a nice day, and I think Maynard played, you know, one of the greatest innings I've seen personally. He made it look just so easy, knocking it around, and he was a very skilled player, one I looked up to. But I do recall, I think, you know, 225, that's quite a decent total, when most of our scores have been, you know, if you look back, I think you could have said they were 160, 170, 180, you know, and then we'd squeeze the life out of people. So to chase those figures, and I think that's something that we've just seen over this 20-year period. You know, 225 is, you know, that's chicken feed nowadays. I mean, people get that in the first 15 overs. I mean, or 20 overs. You know, they're going hell for leather. So, I mean, it was a different era, but certainly that was a, you know, that was an ask, and there was, you know, we needed to bat well to get ourselves over the line. Unfortunately, we did. So, you know, for us, it was definitely probably a different strategy that we'd employed in the run up to it. But like all these things, it was a challenge, and one that we were prepared to take on.
I mean, I'll come back just to sort of focus a bit on the Glamorgan innings. Ian Harvey takes 2 early wickets to obviously put Gloucestershire on top, but a partnership of 137 came after that. Between Mike Powell and Matt Maynard, who you mentioned there, Matt, batting so well. The person who broke that partnership was you, Jeremy, and actually that precipitated a collapse of 5 for 35. So do you kind of remember, was that a game changer? Did you feel when you got Powell out, and did that swing for you?
Was it caught and bowled?
Yeah.
I think we just built pressure. You know, I think you can. I mean, Harv had the skill to bowl magic deliveries. I didn't. You know, I think for me it was about building pressure and dots. And I think when the beauty of that side was we had different. You know, we had Mike Smith, who was absolutely lethal. He was the most unsung hero of that era. I think he was an incredible bowler. His accuracy, his wrist position, the seam was just to die for. But the most unassuming, you know, modest man you've ever met, with the driest sense of humour, and again, lots of good stories with Smudge. But brilliant. We knew going into those massive games that he would just be calm. He was miserly. He didn't want to give away a run. And he got so many wickets in that first few overs with the new ball. And then you've got Ian Harvey taking the ball away from right-handers when Smudge was bringing it back in. So you've got a lethal combination there. You've then got Mark Alleyne coming in with his sort of magic and mystery around the various tricks and skills that he'd got. And then you got myself and Martin Ball really there. Bally spun it more than me, but I was perhaps a bit better at reading the batsman and trying to work out how to use my pace variations. But that combination really just dried the runs up. And I think when teams are trying to use their initial, you know, you've got teams that try and build a platform to start. Well, they never really got a platform against us because we've got Ian Harvey and Mike Smith taking early wickets. And then when they then get into that next phase where they've started to build a bit of a partnership and they're trying to accelerate, that's the time when there was no pace on the ball. So they really had to work hard. And it was probably different scoring runs against us in the middle overs than it was against other teams. And that ability to take the pace off the ball often beat people. So, you know, whether it was a freak ball that spun or what, I don't know. But, you know, getting a wicket at that point was probably important. But, you know, everyone did that. We all just chipped in at the right time. Somebody did a great run out. Somebody took a great catch. Somebody did a great piece of fielding. You know, somebody saved a 2 and the pressure was building all the time. And that was the constant, I guess. But yeah, great final.
I mean, I think just going on to that, I think we had a very good habit of breaking a partnership by creating pressure. And just as things may have just got away from us, we, as Snapey said, you know, whether it be a run out or something, they drilled it backward point and it was, you know, batsmen think it was going for 4 and it was stopped. And it became slightly demoralised as a batting unit. And that, you know, out of that, we used to be able to pick up some, you know, some great scouts. But I mean, the important thing about that game was not only breaking that partnership, but if you just look at those two top order batsmen that weren't able to establish themselves, which was Matthew Elliott, who was a bloody good left-handed Australian batsman who could take a game away from you. And, you know, also Crofty, he didn't like the short ball, but he was destructive in the early stages of an innings in one-day cricket, and he could get away with it. And knocking over those two people early, and then I think Powley was under pressure from ball one. I mean, I think he'd consumed quite a lot of balls before he actually got going. I mean, that eats away at you as a batter. So by all of that combination, which kind of put into context Maynard's knock, which I thought was, you know, a great knock. But it was just that habit of getting wickets when things could have just started to get away from us, which was, one of the advantages that we had.
Yeah, I mean, well, Matt Maynard won the Player of the Match award actually on the day, but he was starved of the strike actually towards the end of the innings. So he would go on to say that he felt that they were at least 20 runs short. And, you know, Matt, I was interested there to hear your thoughts at the interval because, was that shared by the team? Did you think this will take some chasing or what was your view?
I think there was probably a nervousness and without a doubt, I'm sure we would have batted if we had the chance because that was our formula. But equally, you know, as you become successful, everybody works out what your plan is and they try and make you do the opposite. So, you know, we knew we were going to be chasing at some point and our batsmen were going to be under pressure. So I think, you create a mindset around what you sort of think is a good target. And as Matt said, you know, when we're playing at Bristol, 160, 180, you know, the sort of turgid outfield and wicket, you know, we got used to that and a 5-10 run margin was massive. But I think that day at Lord's was a beautiful sunny day. The wicket was flat. Matt Maynard played beautifully. The outfield was fast. So, you know, any of those shots that were going for 2 at Bristol back in the day were going for 4 on that day. And you sort of, I think once we got a bit of momentum and a bit of rhythm up, the run rate was actually quite quick. So I don't think we were ever really under pressure from a run rate perspective because, you know, Mark and Kim and Matt and the guys, Herbie, that had all, you know, kept the clock ticking over. So I think Stephen Fry actually came into the dressing room that day. I've got a picture of Stephen Fry being in the dressing room with myself and Mike Smith. So if I was batting at, 7 or something, I couldn't have been that, you know, pressurized to be chatting to him. So yeah, I think it was all, Matt had got it all under control so we could all have a bit of a relax in the dressing room.
Well, I wanted to ask you about the batting lineup actually, Jeremy, because in that tournament, you know, you'd opened in games and batted sort of, you know, middle order in others. Was that down to opposition or the conditions, or was it a real flexible approach to the whole team's plan?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. I mean, I think I'd been scoring quite well in the championship. I scored 3 or 4 centuries or something in the 4-day stuff. So I felt in good form, and I suppose it was just trying to, you know, as I said, the more successful you become, teams start to work out your pattern and how you're going to do it. And I think that was a danger for us. And where this formulaic approach of, you know, as soon as the fielding restrictions are off, you know, myself and Borley came on, that was sort of a thing that we did every time, pretty much irrespective of conditions. So the opposition start to pick up on that sort of stuff. So you've got to keep changing it up, and maybe me moving around the batting order was a, you know, bit of a distraction for them. I'm not sure how potent it was, but yeah, great. I think, like Matt said, we all played our role, and whatever we got asked to do during that period, we did it. And, you know, I think the flexibility in the bowling unit and the batting unit and the depth that we'd got was one of our strengths, because we'd probably got not too many. You know, we couldn't say we'd got 15, 18 players that could come in, but we'd definitely got, you know, 14 players that were pretty solid and rotated around during that period. And I think that let everybody understand their roles and fit together against each other in some good winning combinations.
Well, in the chase itself, I mean, you know, this predates T20 cricket. So I think we'd say you got off to a blistering start. You know, Tim Hancock and Kim Barnett put on 80 in 16 overs. So, Matt, when you're batting 4, you know, and you see that in front of you, you're sitting on the Lord's balcony. Does that really help to put you at ease when you know you're coming in with some runs on the board?
Yeah, it's nice to. Yeah, it's almost nice to come in with a little bit of pressure off, and you're up with the rates. But when you come in at that sort of level, the field is spread. So for me, when you're up with the rate, all you've got to do is knock it around for 1s and 2s and get, continue the momentum, because that's already been built for you. And I think, purely and simply, that's what Mark and I did in terms of building the partnership there, which inevitably led us over the line. So there was nothing that we had to do. So we were never sort of chasing the game, and it was never getting away from us. So we were kind of void of that pressure that normally makes you do irrational things, and you think, well, Christ, why have I done that? And then they sort of try to make a breakthrough. I think they brought back Wharfie and that lot, who was slightly quicker, and I actually preferred that. Facing someone like Daly just bowling 60 miles an hour is always quite difficult. And then you would be able to get a few away, and that was it. So, but yeah, when you come in on a base like that, it's always helpful. Not having to chase the game and do stuff that's out of the ordinary, really.
Well, you and the skipper put on 95 unbroken to bring home the victory by 7 wickets. But I'd be interested to know when you do you think you're going to win when you've got that much time left, and can you enjoy that, or is it all about you've got to get across the line?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a big occasion, and you've always got in the back of your mind that you don't want it to slip. But we were getting some momentum. We felt, Mark and I felt in control. And I think, we came together on a number of occasions in the middle and basically said to one another, let's not leave this to the next person. Let's get us there. We're in. We're not having to manufacture stuff. Let's just get the job done. And, I think we were both really quite focused on that. Tuned in with the game, and it wasn't, from my perspective, it was done relatively easily. But with that, there is a bit of pressure. You're in a Lord's fire. You've got people chanting for you, and we didn't take it down to the wire, which was nice, and we were well ahead of where we wanted to be. And I think Mark hit the winning runs, but just great to be there at the end.
Where does the innings stand? I mean, you've scored higher, but as an undefeated 50 at the home of cricket in a big Lord's final, where would that innings rank for you?
No, it's up there. It's up there, definitely. It's one of the lasting memories I have of some of the innings that I've produced for Gloucestershire. It ranks along there with one of the highest scores. It ranks along there against the Northamptonshire one-day game where I got 100. I'm not sure Snape was playing for Northampton at that stage. He might have been with us, but it's definitely up there. When you're in front of a packed house, you're 50-odd not out, winning the game for your county in their third game, their third final. It's a great memory to have.
Yeah, we talked about in the previous 2 episodes that the moment of celebration, it's very different to these days, because we have a nice picture of you guys celebrating on the Lord's balcony with, of course, lots of spectators on the outfield, which you don't see anymore. But do you guys remember those celebrations? Do you remember the feeling of victory?
I just remember that the big thing that you started to think about, half of your brain was, I'm at backward point, I might get the catch, so make sure you're concentrating. And then the second part of your brain is, how do I go and nick one of the stumps, as fast as I can out of the ground? So, sometimes, I think in a couple of the finals, I was about 9 feet away from the batsman at backward point. The ball sort of flayed and a middle stump going out just as I picked it up before it got to Jack to pinch. So there were special days. You know, I think the whole atmosphere at Lord's. I remember getting there early in the morning. You know, sun coming up, filling the stadium, and all the sort of hustle and bustle of Lord's. The members coming in first in the egg and bacon ties and the cream jackets, sort of sitting alongside, putting their, you know, cushions out, and then you get the sort of rabble arriving round the crowd, and you know, the hampers are all opening up and champagne corks are opening just as we're warming up. You know, it's an incredible, I think it's an incredible celebration of what's a bloody hard career. You know, we were playing 5 days a week for, well, I don't know, 19 years or whatever we played. And these are the days you dream of. And the fact it was happening in the middle of our careers with a team that we loved and a situation that we thought we could actually win was incredible. I mean, I'd played in a final previously, or been 12th man at a final with Northants. And, you know, we were petrified, really. It was a massive thing. The club had not been there for ages. And there was definitely this feeling, especially in the second season, that we could win these games. And if we held our nerve, we could do it. And I think for me, being in the dressing room with my pads on, knowing that Matt and Mark were playing so comfortably out in the middle, you know, it was an incredibly special time to look over a sunny stadium at Lord's with all your family and friends out there, knowing you're going to win. I don't think we'd had a final where we knew we were going to win. Matt perhaps didn't feel it, but we knew we were going to win in that last hour, and that's incredible. So then the chance to, you know, celebrate with the fans and to bring your family into the dressing room, that's one of the, you know, most amazing memories I've got of all of our family being in the dressing room, drinking champagne and celebrating with each other's families. And I think there are a few young kids knocking about at that time, and it's incredible. You know, it's being a county cricketer is a really, really hard slog, you know, and you know, all those days on the treadmill running vertically and wanting to be sick were sort of, you know, rewarded by those incredible moments in the sunshine at Lord's, where that band of brothers delivered something that I don't think any of us could have believed would happen, but it did. And we're so proud to be part of that generation that were the glorious Gloucesters, that's for sure.
I mean, Matt, I suppose I must ask you, did you nick a stump? Did you get the opportunity to run off something?
Not
He's
quite
got
sure.
that ball behind him, he's not showing you.
I definitely got the ball from the Somerset game.
You caught that, didn't you?
I caught that, and I remember running off, and Shep, poor old Shep, wanted to nick it off me, and I said, "No, you're not having that, matey. That's mine." But I think I've probably got a stump somewhere, probably in the loft somewhere, I'd have thought. But yeah, just running off and grabbing a beer with the coot.
I mean, that season was incredible. Obviously, you would go on to win 2 more trophies. You know, Matt, what do you think? What do you think was, you know, secrets of the success? And I'll come on to Jeremy in a sec. But for you, Matt, what do you think played its part?
Well, there was I do recall a sort of shift in momentum when this run started, and you know, it was down to a shift in culture and a shift in mindset. In the John Bracewell obviously came in, and you know, he was hard nosed, brash. You know, ruffle a few feathers, and you know, call a spade, and it was you might not like it, but there was a definite shift in culture when he came in, and you know, he got rid of, and somebody who I'm indebted to forever, really, it was Courtney, who got me playing first class, you know, got me into first class cricket, and he was the first one to tell me I'd been selected for England A, and you know, and hugely respected figure around Gloucestershire County Cricket Club for what he did, and you know, it was a brave decision to get rid of someone like him after having served the club so well, but John's mindset was around that he wanted everyone to be, you know, to stand up and be counted. He didn't want us to say, "Oh, we've been rolled over for 150, Courtney bail us out of the proverbial." And I think it was that shift in dynamic to say, guys, you have to stand up to be counted. You have to understand your roles. You have to, to continue to develop and evolve as cricketers. And so for me, it wasn't just that year. It started in the run-ups to that when John came in, and there was a clear emphasis that we were going to leave some form of legacy. Everyone wanted to buy into that, and it was a question of mapping out how we were getting there. And through that, it was, as Snapey said, we all became athletes. We all understood what our roles were, what it all stood for, and collectively we all bought into that, and ultimately we delivered in the most successful period of the club's history. So those were the features, and those were the things that changed, I think, Gloucestershire cricket around, and made us ultimately the team that we became. And there was a clear shift in that dynamic for sure. And everyone was up for it. We were in our early 20s, mid 20s, and everybody was up for it. And it was a collective buy-in. And that in itself was exceptionally powerful. And a belief as well, a belief that, if we underperformed with the bat and got 150, we weren't going to lose that game. So, I think it's a combination of all of that together that's made us what we were.
Jeremy, same to you. I mean, you've obviously alluded to some of these elements, but what do you see as making the team so successful in this period?
Well, I think you got a core of players that were really solid and outstanding. There was a fresh input, which was myself, Kim, Ian Harvey was obviously a world-class player, as Matt's just alluded to. I think John Bracewell was ahead of his time in terms of he was a real innovator, and had that incredible work ethic that no one could shirk, really. And I remember when I joined Gloucester, one of the first things in pre-season, it was one of those horrible sort of March days where it was sleeting and snowing. And John said, we're going on a run round the Downs. And I had no idea of my bearings in, Neville Road at the time. And an hour later, we were all sort of trotting back into the county ground. And John had said, before we go, if anyone comes in behind me, there's going to be trouble. So this was, I don't know how many miles, Matt, but we ran for an hour pretty much. And I'd never done that on pre-season. It was normally just, a quick loop around the park and then into the Dog and Duck for a pint at lunch. With Alan Lamb as captain and a few stories, but Gloucester were taking it seriously. I think the fitness levels were incredible, and that did two things. It made sure that our decision making under pressure in those big games was good because we weren't fatigued and we weren't making bad decisions because we were out of breath. And secondly, we had the vast majority of our squad were still fizzing in July and August when these big cup competitions were on. Whereas most people, were sort of blowing by that time and already looking for the Costa del Sol to come and rescue them. But I think our fitness was a critical element. And John's ideas and innovations, the idea of having one of your best fielders at third man, because, that could be as an away swing bowler. You've got somebody the ball's going to go down there a lot more than it's going to go to mid-on. So having somebody running from third man to third man, would have been laughed at 10 years before, but John brought that in, and we had people like James Averis, who were not only great fast bowlers, but incredible athletes as well, and John Lewis as well, incredibly mobile. So we'd gone from these big sort of giants who couldn't touch their toes to athletes, actually, who could run round, scoop the ball up and run people out from the boundary. So I think there was all of that. And I think, teams go through this cycle, don't they? Jack, as one of the most senior players in English cricket at the time, was still playing like a little boy. He was loving his cricket. He was standing up to the fast bowlers and pushing his boundaries himself, pushing new levels. So I think when we all saw that, we were all inspired to try and find more discipline, more skill, more innovation within each of our own games. There was a growing understanding of the combinations between the batsmen and the bowlers and the fielding units. So that second year was much more, the first year was perhaps, can we do it? We were the underdogs and we caught people by surprise. I think the second year is, we could do this again. and we really started to believe in ourselves, and that felt like we'd got a real machine that had been optimized, and we were buzzing at that time. And then I think for various reasons, teams go through cycles, players go past their peak, and teams start to pull apart. Everyone was having families and motivations change and players move on and things like that. So I think those teams go through natural cycles. But those 3 years or so there, things were building up to being something incredible. This particular year that we're talking about here was right in the middle of that, an incredible performance where we won 3 trophies and felt formidable. And, the celebrations and success that came with that was amazing. And something that we all look back on. I mean, Matt and I can't really remember the details of these games, but I can tell you what it feels like to be part of that team. And I look back with huge pride on being part of that Gloucestershire team.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's been brilliant to go over the game and the tournament and that time, really. But I suppose I just wanted to understand how often, if at all, the team meets up. Do you have a catch up, or shall we get you all together next season when our anniversary will be played out properly?
Yeah, we had a bit of a reunion. I can't remember what that was for. That was last year, wasn't it? For the 20 years trophy or something. So we had a bit of a get together at the club. I think 100 or so members came, and we had a bit of a Q&A. So great. And again, for us, we're not in touch greatly with a lot of the people. Certainly I'm not. I live up in Leicestershire now, and I'm pretty full on with work and stuff, but really pleased to get back together with the lads and reminisce. Special times in our lives and times that we'll never forget. And if a few of the chicken men are there in the crowd as well, then I think that's all the better.
Matt, I can't leave without asking you. You're chairman of cricket now for the club, so what your view on the squad? And obviously we've got a season on hold, but how optimistic are you with the current crop and the head coach that you've got?
Well, I think clearly this is a really challenging year for the club and for cricket just generally. I think we had a very good squad put together for all formats, actually. So we were well covered. There were some exciting names that we had coming in with the Afghanistani leg spinner, Pujara's top 5 international batters. Bracey's obviously making waves now, and Payne was left arm swing bowler, had a good season last year. So I think it was going to be a challenge for the club, certainly. But having got into First Division, it was certainly going to be an exciting time for the club. Notwithstanding it's the 150th year, there was a lot of things that clearly you'd put in place to make it an eventful 2020 for the club. So I think we're in very good hands, and certainly Dorse, who's overseeing the players, is very, very well recognised and getting the recognition he deserves. He's a deep thinker. He's very strategic about what he wants and how he wants to go about it. And good for him. He's now being recognised at the higher level. And I think what we want to do and get from this is more recognition at player levels for the likes of James, etc., to start to represent and honour the 3 Lions of England. So if we can get that, I think we're all in a good place. And Gloucestershire has always been a good breeding ground for talent, and sometimes doesn't get the recognition it deserves. But hopefully that is now changing with the current crop we've got.
Great.
As to what cricket we get coming up, I think that's still under considerable debate at the moment. But let's hope we get something towards the back end of the season in any shape or form that people feel safe. That's the main thing here. People feel safe, and at the same time, we don't want to be doing anything that jeopardises the financial side of the club, because that's not just felt with us, but that's felt across all other clubs, and we need to make sure that we can maintain a sound financial springboard for all counties to, if we have to forego this year, but to launch well into 2021. But it's a difficult time, and I'm sure we'll get through it.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Let's fingers crossed we do get some cricket, but really appreciate your time today. And Jeremy, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to hear from you.
Absolute pleasure. Yeah. And if the members can't see any cricket this year, then just crack open that box set of highlight DVDs from the glorious years of all those finals. I'm sure that'll bring a tear to your eye, but you'll need a nice cider to go alongside the celebrations. At least we win all those games, so it's a good way to get through your afternoon.
Brilliant. Thank you, chaps, and thanks for tuning in to episode 3 of The Glorious Years.